Wish I did this earlier this morning when it was cooler. By the way, hi, you're watching Bare Knuckle Binder, welcome to the channel. In the last video I did about this truck, I talked about how the carb was spilling gas because the diaphragm for the accelerator pump was torn. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. They show up like little cracks, and so that's what will leak back out of your accelerator pump there. So we need to put in a different accelerator pump here. And you just basically pull it out of there, but you make sure you keep your hand on that little ball. Where did it go? There it is. It's trying to get away from me. But that's how it holds the accelerator pump in there. If you're unfamiliar with Holley 1904s, you push this in, it falls into that little compartment, and then this rides inside a bore so that ball can never come out. So that can never come out. But release the pressure, ball falls out. There's your cylinder. All right, so I'm gonna go grab another 1904 kit out of the shipping container, and we'll put this together. All right, let's see if this is the right one. So here's the accelerator pump. Let's see where the other one is. Here. You just got to compare these because some internationals are different. See, this is the different one. It's like 3/16 of an inch longer. So the internationals, they come in two different sizes on the 1904s. Some of them have that longer shaft, some of them have the shorter shaft. And I think the only reason the S-160 has a shorter stroke on it on this carburetor is because this carburetor is not original to the truck. I could probably put the bigger one in there, but maybe I will do that. I don't know. You know what? I have to say this real quick. The one with the longer shaft, everything else about them is exactly the same, but that shaft is just a little bit longer. And so the R170, I had the original 1904 off of that, and it has the longer shaft, and I ended up having to cut a piece of steel stock, just round stock, and I ended up, I can't remember if I JB welded or siliconed it to the end of that. There's just the throttle linkage hits this, so I think it's got constant pressure on it. I don't think it'll ever fall off, but it's good to know which one we're working with here. So if you have the longer shaft, that looks like that might be the part number for it. That's all I got on hand right now anyway, so we're gonna make her work. It's been a little more overcast today in the afternoon, so that's nice. Well, I got the carb all put that back together, and let's see how she does. Yeah, that's cool. gauge down there. Only ones that really work on this one are the fuel and the temp. Ammeter disconnected right now, I think. Let's look under the hood. Make sure we got that gas leak figured out. No more leaky gas. Still got the vacuum disconnected. Idling pretty good. What is that all about? There's gotta be something wrong with the gauge. This is the most responsive this throttle has ever been. Now it's going back down again. Oh, that door jamb is so noisy. Well, I'm getting her dialed in, but now it wants to die with a choke off. So I gotta time it some more. But in the meantime, I can fix this door. All right, so for this door jamb, see, that's the problem right there. Part of it I can't fix correctly because, let me show you this. This weather stripping is toasted. See, it's just completely petrified and falling out of there. But what we can do is we can tighten the door jamb, which, getting close here, got 4 7/16. You loosen these up. Now there's a plate behind this that these screw into on the inside of the door, and these holes that it's on are slotted, so you can actually slide it. So you loosen these up. You have to get them super loose, but just so you can see that it takes the pressure off of the lock washers there. And then you got to knock it over, and you tap it over the hammer, but you don't actually want to beat the hammer on there. So I get a block of steel and just kind of, you can do it with a block of wood too. So you don't want this thing taking up the impact. So this is in all the way now, and with the weather stripping toasted like it is, it might be too much, but it might be as good as it's gonna get. I need to order a weather stripping kit for this cab. I need to do a lot for this cab, actually. I need to go through and paint the floor and get a new floor mat. I'd also like to recover the seat again. I did this out of just spare materials and foam, and I don't like using foam anymore. It's just too squishy. It's honestly, if that makes sense, you get lost in that thing. So it's tight enough to hold now. That is a lot better. Now it's obviously not perfect. And in the meantime, before I order the correct gaskets from like Restoration Specialties or something, I can get some just random stuff from the hardware store and put it in there for just like the interim. It's not something you can't, it's not going to cause damage to the door having something that's not the right rubber. But the long term, you definitely want to get the right thing so it looks right, acts right, everything. But yeah, this is a lot better than it was. So anyway, that's so much better than it was. All right, you're gonna have to excuse the noise. There's an AC unit like 10 feet behind the camera, but I've got to get this done, so it's just getting hotter out here. Now we're on to the timing part. In the last video about this truck, I simply timed this thing by ear by turning the distributor counterclockwise to retard the spark. I just wanted to see how far I could get it to get the truck to run as slowly as possible. Because at that point, I was eliminating a vacuum leak. It's the first time I heard the truck run like that. At this point, I'm trying to get the truck to run perfectly. So I have to dial in the timing. Now to do that, a lot of guys like to use a timing light. I personally prefer to static time something. So a few videos before the last one about this truck, I made a video about how to find the spark on a 6-cylinder International. Now I'm going about this the same way because that's all static timing. Off camera, I prepared for this just so I don't have to shoot all this in the sun. If you're curious about the whole method of what I'm doing here, I'll put the link to that video about static timing in International 6 in the video description. So off camera, I got this motor all ready to time. I rolled the motor over by hand. The little button on the flywheel is in the window on the bell housing, directly at the pointer. It's on a compression stroke. The rotor is pointed towards number 1. And so all I have to do now, I need to set up a jumper wire to somewhere hot on the truck, run that to the coil, and then I have my test light. And I need a screwdriver to loosen and tighten the distributor. But other than that, we're pretty much good to go. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this thing lined up with the button so it's right in firing order, and then I'm gonna advance it a few degrees. And then we should be pretty much right on the money. From there, it's pretty straightforward. I'm in the home stretch. All I gotta do, spend a few days this week driving the truck around, just adjust it by feel to where I like it. So I found that especially with the older stuff, you can time it, you can get it dialed in perfectly, but depending on where you live, what kind of driving you do, you're gonna wanna adjust it. And these are made to adjust like that. For a lot of highway driving, you wanna adjust these a little advanced. You don't want them pinging, but you want a little advanced because that way you can really stretch it out on the highway and the truck will cruise better. On the other hand, if you're towing a lot, if you're hauling a lot, if you're going up a lot of hills, you're gonna wanna retard that spark so that when you get into the thick of it, that motor can really dig in. More on that later, but I'm basically gonna static time the truck now, advance it a few degrees, and we'll call her good. Oh yeah, and if you're wondering, the dog bed is on there to keep that fender a little cool because the rest of that truck has got to be about 120 degrees already. All right, so I thought I had the camera running and I did a lot of explaining, so I just got to do it again. So I'm really practiced up. So I have the cover off the distributor. I have the valve cover off. I have a hot wire lead attached to the coil. It's not attached to the hot lug yet. Now I have my little relay box open here, right there. So I have my test light is on the distributor side of the coil here and connected to the ground in the relay box. So when those points open and this hot wire is connected, this light will come on. Now that's how points ignition works. When the points open, the field inside the coil collapses and it shoots a spark to whatever spark plug it's pointing towards on the distributor cap. Now as far as timing marks are concerned, the button that is on the flywheel is directly in the middle of the window on the bell housing with a pointer pointed at it. As far as turning the motor over to get that button in its right position, I had to roll the motor over. When I opened that window, it's funny because the button was directly in the center, exactly where it needed to be, but it was on the opposite end. So what I did was I took the valve cover off, I rolled the motor over, I watched the first cylinder here, I saw the intake valve open, and I knew I was coming up onto a compression stroke. And so when it comes up, both these valves, you can feel the slack in them. That's closed, it's in firing position on a compression stroke. The button cell is, we're at top dead center. So now we just got to get this thing to turn on to figure out where exactly we are in firing position, and then I need to advance it a few degrees from there. I feel like we've been through this already. Now, one bummer about this is that the lug for the ignition is also on the lug of the fuel pump. So we're gonna have to listen to the fuel pump a little bit, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. All right, she's on now. All right, so the light came on. We're in firing position. It was really, that was quite retarded, no pun intended. So I'm going to advance it a few degrees just by feel to about 1, 2, 3, right about there. But tighten it up. All right, so now there's one more thing I want to make sure of, but I'm going to take all this stuff off first. Okay, so I'm going to leave this camera on. I want to see if this distributor is advancing with the vacuum advance. Just because we disconnected the vacuum for the brakes, the vacuum for this advance runs off the carb. All right, so it's not running perfect yet. I knew there's gonna be some adjustment from here on out too, but there's a few other things I can check. With 6 cylinders, one of the things that V8 guys miss a lot, isn't necessarily the problem here, but it could be, it's something I'll check, is get the motor warmed up and go through and tighten the manifold bolts. Those manifolds are really heavy and they hang off the side and they rattle a lot, especially with something like this. This truck's suspension is pretty unforgiving, so this thing just bounces around all the time. It can loosen up, it can give you some type of vacuum leaks. Another thing is that I know that carb is not perfect. I know that that throttle shaft really should be remachined, so I'll get this thing to a point as good as I can get it, and then I'll send that carb off to get remachined. And a third thing is really electronic ignition. I really am at the point with this thing, I'll try it, because every condenser I put in an old truck is just a question mark. I mean, you just don't know if it's gonna give you problems. It's hard to tell what it's doing. I have a Farmall B over there that for some reason it just gets worse and worse and worse. I replace the condenser, it won't run at all. Every once in a while it'll fire, and I think it's a condenser, but I'm not for sure. So that's, I guess, maybe another video. But so moving forward, there'll be another video about this truck. I'll drive it around, try to dial it in a little more. You know, it could be valves. I adjusted those pretty well, but I can do it again. I want to approach this thing like I'm starting from zero. So, you know, it did the timing, you know, blocked off all the brake related vacuum, and I'll start reintroducing that slowly. But then, you know, we'll check vacuum leaks in the manifold. We'll check, you know, we'll get the carb remachined. I want this thing to idle right down to 450 flawlessly. That's what everyone's goal should be with one of these trucks. Like, if it doesn't idle like that, it's not running properly. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you don't mind. That really helps me out if you dig this sort of thing, especially like a 9-foot bed on a truck like this. I've got 9-foot bed shirts. I've got shirts that I designed in my online store, link is in the video description, that expound the beauty of the 9-foot bed. So you should check those out. I've got other shirts too, and stickers and hoodies. Check them out. And I am planning to be at the 42nd annual Wheels of Time Truck and Tractor Show in Richland Center, Wisconsin. That is my hometown. I'm planning to be there with the R170 Coleman. I'm planning to be there with the M5H6 that is bobbed down to 4-wheel drive, so you could call it an M5H4 if you'd like, and at least one of the Farmall M's, probably the 41. And it looks like I might be pulling a float in the parade because that is also the week of my 25th class reunion and my high school's homecoming. But if you make it out to the Wheels of Time show there in Richland Center on October 3rd, 4th, and 5th, come up to me, find me. I will give you a bare knuckle binder sticker if you ask for one. And maybe I might have some new ones for the R170 by the time that rolls around. In the meantime, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Man, it's hot out here.